fiction, science fiction, horror, fantasy, crime, LGBT, thriller.
You have now entered the House of Mystery.
Welcome back into the House of Mystery. Of course, I'm Al Warren, and joining us today is the one and only Peaches.
Oh, now I'm just Peaches. I love how this name has evolved throughout the show. I was once my actual name, Jennifer Ann Gordon, and then like Peaches Ann Gordon, and Peaches Gordon, and then you forgot the Peaches maybe for a while, and yeah. I'm glad I feel like just Peaches is who I've always wanted to be.
Well, there you go. Then that's who you are. You are.
I mean, I feel bad for long-time listeners who are like, wasn't Peaches like a demon puppet burlesque dancer?
Yeah, right. And?
Your question is what?
Yeah. And you know, and speaking of that, what is going on with your community again? You know, I'm off.
My community of
horror writers, you know.
Oh, no. We're not.
Oh my God, insanity. Every time I go offline for a while, then I come back and it's like, and they're all fighting. What are you talking about? They're all unfriending some.
But here's the thing. It's like, so for me, I feel like I'm in the horror community and I love the horror community so much. And because I love it so much, I feel like the people I know personally are also amazing people. So like, we kind of dodge any drama. Not any drama. I shouldn't say that. We dodge most drama.
Right, but you can't help but notice because
you do notice it, but it's,
you notice, and it's kind of unusual. But you know, hey, I guess it's entertainment. You know, I mean, everything's so boring in the U.S. right now that.
Yeah, there's nothing going on here.
There's nothing going on. It's so
like,
quiet.
I sleep well, like, every night.
You sure?
I just, like, go to bed, Peaches,
yeah.
Wake up, Peaches, just so.
Everything's lovely.
Happy and content, very normal day to day.
Right, so we need the excitement. That's all.
No. But I will say, as we're recording this, like StokerCon is going on, and that is such a beautiful, amazing, positive place for horror people, and the people in the horror community are Halloween people to celebrate. So that is happening because I'm not there. Yeah. No drama. I don't know any drama.
Well, you know.
And I don't want to know any drama. It's just
I've never gone to StokerCon. I've gone to StrokerCon, but
I feel like that might be a different thing.
Oh, really? Oh.
I mean, there might be a crossover.
Dressed up. There's a lot of leather and sparkles, and I don't know. I didn't notice the difference.
I mean, probably less vampire teeth at StokerCon.
What are you trying to say?
Anyway. I don't know what I'm trying to say. Anyway, hoops, it's been super boring here in the United States.
Yeah.
I mean, definitely don't wish I lived in Canada.
No, now there's the excitement, boy. That's where it all goes on, you know. Well, speaking of excitement, we've got an author with us today, and he's talking about his debut novel. And it's called Tales of the Lavender Twilight. Alfred P. Doblin, thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. If I knew I would be wearing some kind of Dracula outfit so that I might, relate.
Oh.
And
you're not just wearing a Dracula outfit just like sitting in your office. I mean, that's what I do just on a normal Thursday.
Well, you see, but it's already 5:00 where I'm at, so I'm not in the office. So, I leave the cape at the door. It's hot out in New York. So, the no Dracula outfit, but, to the point, when I was a young man, Frank Langella was doing Dracula on Broadway, and that was a sexy Dracula, and I imagine that was probably, a lot of things were happening. A lot of things were probably happening after that show that wasn't part of the horror scene.
Ooh.
I mean, I would like it to be both. You said Frank Langella doing Dracula, and I was like, I am not going to listen to anything else for a little while. I'm just going to let my imagination.
Well, that's when he was with Whoopi Goldberg too.
Frank Langella?
Yeah.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that either.
I know a lot of things. I'm in.
Hey, you know all the gossip.
I do. Well, I have to be. I've got to get out of this. I'm getting old, so. But yeah, it's true. They were a couple. There you go.
Well, but anyway, there are no vampires in any of my stories. Just sort of bring it back to me.
It's all about.
I love that. Are you a Leo?
No, I'm actually I'm a Scorpio. So there's
dangerous.
So there's a horror sign, I guess, for you.
There you go. Well, if you can't get in StokerCon, you can always go to StokerCon. Oh, that's terrible.
Alan, no.
No, just
not
say
to
no.
be confused with Alfred. Alan, yeah. I'm going to have to really use my theater training to enunciate the end of both.
Enunciate, that's it. So listen, what is Tales of the Lavender Twilight? So what's the premise of the book?
Well, the idea, I first started with a single story that I didn't really think was going to be part of a collection that was based on an annual Thanksgiving that I experienced with my two best friends, a gay couple been together for over 40 years. And it's a community of people where for Thanksgiving, there's some people who know each other. And then there are people who have no place to be, a little bit like Broadway Danny Rose kind of thing, that they're very welcoming, that if they know people who, just need to be with the community. And over the years, there's a lot of drama, because there's gay people and there's theater people, which are like no people I know, or something. And the genesis for the first story was I wanted to write a story that was like Joyce's The Dead, much shorter, but where somebody dies and it's an uplifting story, where the dead is nobody actually literally dies, and it's a very sad story. And then from that first story, I started thinking of some of these characters started to take life. And Tales of the Lavender Twilight is 11 stories. They're not connected per se, but there's a universe of about a dozen people that pop out in and out of the stories. So someone who might be very prominent in one is like a cameo in another. They're mostly men in their late 50s to middle 60s. There is a middle-aged dog, a Cocker Spaniel named Maurice, that's very prominent in one story, and he's looking for a hot gay owner. But for the most part, they're men of a certain age. And I wanted to write about people that I knew, although I don't know any erudite Cocker Spaniels. But I may be in the wrong borough in New York. Maybe if I leave Brooklyn, I would meet one on the Upper East Side of New York. But I wanted people who were relatable, who weren't necessarily like party people. They weren't club people, because they're too old for that. That's not what they're looking for. But they are out and about, and some of them are set in bars, where there are communities that are formed very clearly, particularly I think in the gay community, and particularly among older men, where you're looking for the kinds of people that that look like you and sound like you to a certain point, while your eye is still scanning the room for someone who doesn't look like you and doesn't sound like the person next to you and might be much more interesting. So I wanted to make these people kind of real, and some are very sad stories. Some are hysterically funny. Most have a piece of truth in them. I mean, beyond the idea that I think all people want to form community and want to find love and want to feel nurtured in some capacity. But some are, based on like real characters in my life who, I've added a little bit of fiction to them, and they become kind of fun. So the stories are also set between the East and the West Coast, because I did live on the West Coast for a period of my life. So the first 6 are set in New York, and the last 5 are set in Los Angeles.
So you used some real people and added fiction to make them
better,
exciting. yeah, there you go. Well, so who are these people Like, were they just friends, or were they people you've worked with, or?
Well, no, some are friends. The story that's probably as folks have been reading the book, not enough folks, but hopefully more folks will read the book. It's just out. There's a story called Mr. Picky Comes to Town. And Mr. Picky is a theater critic in New York. And Mr. Picky is a moniker that's given to him because he's generally critical of the shows that he sees, and he's inspired by a person, one of the closest people in my life. The Mr. Picky is a name that someone had once given him because he is a little bit on the picky side, but infused him with a lot of stuff that isn't part of him. I mean, it sort of looks like him. He's kind of a stylized, man of color in his middle to late 50s. He's sort of he's fictionalized. So I'd say if you can combine, the Black Panther and the moves of the cartoon Pink Panther and throw a little bit of the intellect of a Barack Obama, that would be who Mr. Picky is. And the person he's based on has all of those attributes, but not quite as, defined as that. And, but he has a particular way of looking at life, and that's a very funny story. He goes, he's going to take a sabbatical after he pans a show, and he's driving up the New York Thruway, and he takes a detour through the Catskills, and he sees this sign for this old hotel that is long gone, one of these big hotels in the Catskills would have had a theater, and he thinks it might be fun to investigate. So he pulls off the Thruway, he gets into the town, and he very quickly discovers that the entire town is populated by out-of-work actors whose careers were ruined by him. And there's a little kind of melee that happens, and a town
And this
staff...
isn't horror?
No. It would be a horror if you had to watch these people on stage and pay like $300. So the fact that they're in a town called Hemlock, so that does sound a little Stephen Kingish, I guess. Like they all live in a hemlock, because hemlock trees are actually indigenous to that part of New York. And in any case, he runs afoul of the law, sort of, and the sheriff, who hates musical theater, he basically tells him, we can lock you up for 4 weeks, or for community service, you can direct the musical the town does every spring, which is usually god-awful, and it's a production of The Sound of Music. So now, out of what I've just said to you, that's true. When I was a younger man, right out of college, I have a BFA in voice, even though I'm a writer, and I worked in a singing group. It was called the Winged Victory Singers, not making up that name. And a lot of churn in the group. People were turning over all the time. I guess literally and figuratively, there was a lot happening in that group. But I wasn't out at that particular moment, and this was like 1981 or 82. I'm a little fuzzy on my years. But the Catskills still had all those hotels, and we would perform in these hotels in places that are long gone, burned down, Browns, and there was the Nevele and Grossinger's and the Concord and Pines. I mean, they all sound like trees or brisket. And I did that for a summer, and I got a real feel for the Catskills. And when I was in The Sound of Music, in this particular story I chose, and with a really bizarre set design, is based on one of the most horrible productions of The Sound of Music I was in the 11th or 12th grade of high school. So I basically, if I've been horrified by something as a youngster, it pops up in something that I'm writing. So that's like a story where I've pulled out stuff from people I know, and then made it more fun. There are characters that you see out and about. I mean, I live in New York City, so I mean, there are characters all over the place. Another story is called The Dog Pimp of Columbia Heights. That's the one with the erudite Cocker Spaniel. And I've seen people in my neighborhood, and I live in Brooklyn Heights, so Columbia Heights is a street in Brooklyn Heights, that sit on a bench and they talk to their dog as if they're the reincarnation of William F. Buckley. They're like talking to their dog about like Proust or something like that. And they're doing it because they're hoping that as people walk by, they'll be intrigued by like this person. So interesting. They're talking to their dog about, somebody that nobody's ever read. And they use it as bait. That's why I sort of call it, the dog pimp of Columbia Heights. They use it as bait for people to engage with them. They're pimping out their dog to hopefully have conversation with another person, with a human being. And I took that to kind of an extreme where there are these people who have their particular piece of the sidewalk, or where their bench is. This is their bench. They have staked it out. I think it's like, surfers have their piece of the ocean, where you don't go into their area. It's the same kind of thing. So that's part of the reality that I see, other than the entire story is told from the perspective of this gay dog, which, I haven't spoken to a gay dog.
Oh, then you should meet my dog. His name is Lord Tubby. You would love him.
Well, with a name like that, I guess he'd have to be gay,
I mean, we didn't know. We let him tell us. He was just like very, like his most interesting connections were with a male cat. So like, I'm thinking he's probably like more pan than necessarily gay, quote unquote. But Alfred, I love that you're taking so much of your real life, your history, and turning it into these stories. Was there ever a moment, because this is your debut, when you were writing that you thought you were writing a memoir? Was there a moment that you thought, I have to fictionalize this?
Not in these
or
stories.
Else.
No, not in these stories. I mean, there are. It's not. I haven't gone to that place yet. Maybe would be the best. There are people that close friends can recognize. Oh, this is that person. But they don't have that quality. I think there's a lot of me in the stories that people will hear, but not a memoir. It's also, I guess, because it's a collection of short stories. It doesn't have that quality. But there are people having fun. There are people that have fun in these stories. But I'm a bit of a romantic. So, I think a lot of my characters, other than one or two that are profoundly sad, people are hopeful. The whole concept that these stories are in a book called The Lavender Twilight, to me, it's a hopeful period. It's not, being in your 60s is not an ending. The ending happens when you literally end, which, who knows when that is. And I very much wanted that when people read this, they might get a little teary here and there, but that there's a sense that people, we want to make community. That's really, I think, what we're all about, whether that's a true love or whether those are close friends or they're the people that you chat with in a bar a couple of nights a week and everybody knows your name and everybody knows your business. I think, so to your point about, Jennifer, the memoir thing, that is very me. I think the people who know me, would, say, oh, is this place, this other place, this real place that I go to, or, is that person based on someone we remember you talking about? But it's not that close yet that it's a memoir.
Right. But it sounds very personal. It sounds like you put a lot of yourself into this. So at the end of the day, now the book is complete and it's out there, what do you think it's done for you?
Well, I feel good about completing it, because I'm in my 60s, so it's taken me a while to get a book published. I've actually finished another collection that I'm hoping, might go somewhere in another year. It's given me a little more confidence that in my next chapter of being, that that I might be able to be, producing more fictional work. I mean, most of my life I was a journalist, so I've been writing my entire life and writing columns and writing editorials, and I was an opinion writer because I'm not, short of opinions, but I really want to be working more on fiction, and I'd also like to do some playwriting. So I feel more empowered, at this point. I'm enjoying getting feedback from folks who don't know me as well as they read them, and kind of a little happy. I'm happy and surprised when somebody loves it. It's what is it? The Sally Field effect. Like, oh, you really like me.
I don't think that ever goes away.
No.
I hope it doesn't.
Neither does Sally Field. I run into her all the time. So,
with each one of these stories, is there like a subtext? Is there a meaning behind each one of these stories that you wanted people to get, or is it just entertainment?
No, there's, what the first story is called Holy Communion, and I, I think not uncommon. A lot of people are, have Catholic upbringing, and history with that. And there was a period in my 30s, actually when I was starting to finally come out, I worked as a journalist in Catholic media. So it was a very weird environment, but the Catholicism is sort of stuck in my head. But the story is set in a bar, and a regular in the bar has died a while ago. He was sort of famous, and there was a memorial service, and all these people in the bar went to the memorial service, and they never really knew him professionally, so then they come back, and it's sort of like a wake of sorts in this bar. But the thing that this person who died, that's important in the story, and important in, I think, the way the characters start digesting this, was, he was like them. He lived alone. He didn't have a partner, and he was found. After so many days, someone noticed an odor in his building, and he was found. And that's a real fear and a real concern that, many people who live alone have. In the apartment building I live in, actually, there was a man on my floor, maybe 20 years ago, all kept to himself. I think he had some issues in terms of being able to actually be comfortable with other people. But the neighbor next door, who was a physician, noticed a few days apparently after he passed, there was an odor by the door, and she called 911. She knew what it was, and she called police, and it was very tragic, and it was very sad. The idea that you die, everybody dies alone. That's in the book, that concept, but that you sort of know that you're alone as you're passing. So that was that's something I very much wanted to deal with and express. And the character who is dead in the beginning is sort of important in many of the other stories, because there are these sort of 6 degrees of separation, and it's not a running theme in all the stories. Some of them are flat out hilarious, but the idea that we could not, we could end and nobody would know that we ended is something that is a theme that I think I play with a bit in the book. Not with the gay dog, so just so and not with the theater critic.
That was my burning question. I mean, I would hope it for the theater critic.
Yeah, no, the theater critic, he lives on the edge. He's not. There's this very funny.
Oh, I went to college for theater. I have very strong feelings about theater critics.
Yeah, well, they're I don't, they're unique kinds of people. But they're necessary. It's like, I guess it's like when you go to the gym, you have to tear down the muscle to make it strong or something like that. But this guy is kind of fun, and at the end of the day, he wants to be part of community as well. Not community theater, but community.
That's
Right.
beautiful.
Well, so each one of these characters, do you see them, hear them, feel them? Do you picture who they are?
I do.
You do. It's just like writing a full book, like when you're doing just one story with one couple, let's say. So you actually are intimate in a way. You're hearing them, so to speak.
It's I'm not an outline kind of guy. I don't map out a lot. And maybe that's, short stories don't have that much, it's not that complicated in terms of where you want to go. But usually, like a character presents himself to me, so that I sort of see this person in a kind of fuzzy way. And whether I'm at my laptop or I walk around a lot. I always have something to write with the old-fashioned way. They'll just start talking. I'll just start letting them talk, and they'll meet somebody. And then that person starts talking, and then as the conversation gets a little more involved, they may introduce somebody else. They may make me aware that I didn't get something right in my head about them, like that they had a quality or a characteristic that all of a sudden is kind of interesting, and that's sort of my process. It's a kind of spontaneous thing. So I write in spurts. I have intense periods where I can't stop writing, and then everything's kind of low for a while.
Right. Well, when that's happening, when a character presents himself to you, does that ever happen when you're driving?
Well, I live in New York City now, so I don't drive.
When you're just like standing and in a crowd and like half annoyed and also half inspired, did the words come then?
Not, I would say I actually do a lot of writing in public places. I can find a bench and the people coming by, I can do that. I've not found like where I'm like having a conversation with someone where I'll just tell them, oh, shut up, I've got this other person talking to me in my head. Because, generally that doesn't work well. Maybe in a couple of gay bars it would, but most of the places I go to, that would be seen as like, ooh, walk away now.
Like maybe Alfred might be high maintenance if he's already doing that at a bar.
Yeah, or Alfred just maybe needs maintenance. But I think when I'm usually out and about, I've sort of past that moment. I'm a big musical theater person. So I do have the person that Mr. Picky is based on thinks that I use way too many musical theater references.
Well, now I need to know what your favorite musical is.
I don't know if I have a favorite, but one of them is Sunday in the Park with George. And the point I was actually going to make was that the idea about finishing the hat, which is the name of one of that two-part biography they have. They use that piece from his lyric from Sunday in the Park. But the idea that you can't, like if you're in the middle of painting the hat, this pointillist, with these little dot things, you can't escape it. You can't get out of the universe of the hat. But then at some point you are ready to walk away from the hat. And, hopefully there is someone waiting for you. But there might not be. But usually when I go out and about, it's like that creative wave has stopped. And I realize, it's time to go out and about.
Well, listen, okay, so let's talk about how readers and fans find you. Like, so the book's available everywhere, but do you have a website? Do you do social media? Where do people interact with you?
Well, the 2 subway train, you can interact very regularly.
Oh my gosh, at what time? I mean, this might get very specific, Alfred.
Well, I go to work at a certain time, but, I use X because I used to be a journalist, so Twitter was a big part of my universe, so I still use X. I'm not a big Facebook person, but my publisher has told me, get over yourself. So, but I don't have a web page yet. That will change, I think, soon. But I haven't done that. I'm trying to network to do some, I'm going to be doing a reading from the book at the LGBT Center in New York on 13th Street in a couple of weeks. And that should be kind of fun. I would say right now, if people want to sort of know what I'm thinking, the X is probably what I use more at the moment. I'm trying to gravitate to Blue Sky, but I basically have no followers. I'm sort of.
Blue Sky's been hard. It's a hard transition.
So I need to be much more aggressive for people to find me. Maybe that's why I'm single still. But your question wasn't about that. It was how to find readers, not for me to find my one true love. But I also view this whole process as going to be an adventure. That the book is out, and and how I can promote it, and I'm doing a lot of what I would call, what in years gone by would have been a cold call, but where I'm sending emails to people that I might have some slight connection 3 times removed, and I know they have like 200,000 followers, and be like, I'm the friend of this person, if you remember this, and so I'm trying to become creative about that. I think there is no shame when you're a new author. You just sort of have to view that, what's the worst that can happen?
I'm sorry that Alan and I both laugh. I'm so sorry, Alfred. No, your hopes and dreams are no, there is no worst that can happen.
Because I think you have to be, as I said, I have a degree in music. I mean, if you were a theater person, rejection is part of the deal. And
100%.
And it's, some of it is helpful. Some of the rejection, you can try to figure out why. Why don't they like me, or why isn't something resonating? But at the same time, I think it maybe strengthens your resolve that you wrote it because you had something to say, and you wrote it a particular way because this is the way you wanted to convey it. And, if somebody wants you to sound like somebody else, they should buy that somebody else's book. After they buy yours and are dissatisfied, because you still want the royalty. But
yeah, we still want the royalties. But I think what we're saying is we all creatives, all theater people, all writers, we we're all kind of living for that Sally Field moment that you like me, you really like me, and I feel like the right people will find you. The people who need to find you will find you. They'll connect with your work. And that makes all of the rejections worthwhile.
No, I agree with you 100%. And I also think, that it's interesting with the Sally Field thing is, that there were years where people just, saw her as, the flying nun in Gidget, and they didn't realize there was this really smart actress, who would, grow, for decades later. And I think that's true of all of us, that we can often be pigeonholed early on as being this kind of writer or this kind of person. And I think within the queer community, particularly among older folks, your process of how you come out is continual. As you become more and more comfortable, not comfortable being gay or lesbian or queer, but the society has given us more freedoms to be more of who we are. Now, where society may take us, I don't know, in the next, couple of years, but we're all evolving. And I think it's a good thing that we do evolve. I think it's not a good thing if we feel like, okay, this is who we are and this is how we should be. Even if everybody thinks you're fabulous, I think you should be, constantly evolving. So I'm hoping, that these stories will give people who have read me as a journalist. I spent almost 2 decades at the Bergen Record, which was a significant regional paper in New Jersey. I wrote columns twice a week, and I wrote gazillions of editorials, and everybody knew I was gay, but I wasn't writing, I didn't write like, Alfred P. Doblin, gay journalist. It was, but I would write about gay issues and queer issues, but not consistently. I mean, I did many, many other things. But I'm hoping that people who, just saw me as someone that they read, following politics in New Jersey or whatever would say, like, I'm kind of curious, or I didn't know he had a sense of humor like that, or he would talk about, men having relationships in that way.
Well, there you go. We have it now. Well, there we go. And everybody, the book, Tales of the Lavender Twilight, and it's Alfred P. Doblin. So thank you for coming by the show. Thank
you. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you so much.
This has been a production of the House of Mystery Radio Show. To find out more about our show, guests, or hosts, go to our website at houseofmysteryradio.com.